So like if you are talking or thinking about a way to describe the generic process of networking and making introductions based on your research, there's the way that you do it, and then there's stuff that you're finding. How could you like say high level, first people do this, then they do this, then they do this, then they make the intro?
If I gave you like the analysis of what I've discovered?
Yeah, so like what's that process?
So parts of it are very, very similar. So a lot of times when connectors decide to make an introduction to someone, it happens because they're in person, right? So like I meet you in person, or I'm talking to you on the phone, or I haven't seen you in a while, we're having lunch, we run into each other, and they're like, oh my God, I should introduce you to blah, 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 right? And then sometimes there's one bucket of people that do it right on the spot, depending on their relationship with the other person and how welcoming that other person is going to be to an introduction without them having to filter or come at it professionally. But then you have the other ones that have to remind themselves a day or two later to actually do it. And sometimes they require opt-in. So when you tell somebody in person, you're like, hey, I want to introduce you to this person. They usually say yes or no on the spot, right? They're like, oh yeah, that would be great. So that's already them, one person opting in. Then you have to go and ask this other person, hey, do you want to meet my friend, or are you willing to talk to my friend about this thing? Blah, blah, blah. Are you interested in making this connection? And then after that person approves, then you have to go back and make the introduction between both parties. There's also like the feedback loop. Sometimes people don't care. Sometimes people do care. They want to know how it went. Sometimes people care to the point where like, that's actually like their reward, where they like, it went well, like it worked. You know, people saying like, oh, great, it worked. The connection worked. But that's like the general process that I've seen that has been pretty consistent throughout.
Yeah. I would say one of the things for me, I'm a natural connector. I have to check myself sometimes and not offer because maybe the person I'm about to offer to is not worth my extra time to invest in.
Right.
And so then I find myself making introductions that I volunteered to make to someone that's like not of high value for me. Like there's not an exchange of and a relationship there. And like then my to-do list of introductions I need to make gets longer and longer, and the burden of that to-do list gets longer. And then I'm like, why did I even offer in the first place? It's not like this person is reaching out to me, asking me to make that introduction and, you know, like following up with me. Right.
And there's also givers and takers. So
right. So then like I've made introductions for both clients and peers, partners, whatever. And there's a real, like, if they don't follow up and they tell me like 3 weeks later, they still haven't followed up. And I did the double opt-in and got it, like gave everyone a heads up. And then they don't follow up. It's really disappointing. And then I look at my to-do list of introductions and I'm like, why am I constantly offering? You know,
yeah,
so I
true.
try to restrain myself sometimes and make sure I'm only offering to the right people. I think there's this thing involved called inferred trust, right? Like if you are willing to introduce me to a friend of yours, your friend will infer trust in me because we have you.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
But then that also means that if I do something super shitty, that's a reflection on you. I'm learning lessons where I need to be more careful, but I do agree that some introductions have turned into like really, really fruitful relationships, and that just makes me so happy.